Everyone, and welcome to the Retro Channel. Lately I've been playing around with a lot of Commodore 64s, and to be honest, I need a little break from them. So today we're going to look at a 64 of a different kind, which is hidden away in this bag. And if we look inside, yeah, if you guessed that, you guessed right. This is a Nintendo 64, not mine, belongs to a friend of mine, and they said it was having issues, basically the usual troubleshooting helpful information of it doesn't work. So let's take a look. Now, full disclaimer, I do know very little about the Nintendo 64, apart from playing a lot of GoldenEye with a good friend of mine back in the day. So yeah, this could be a bit of a journey. Hopefully we'll get something out of it. So yeah, this will be fairly casual, I think. Let's just give it a bit of a wipe down first, because it is filth. At least want to be comfortable touching the thing. Oh man. Right, that's at least a little bit better. Let's make sure, is this just the jumper? I think this is, it's not even going to come out. I'm pretty sure the actual memory expansion, little cartridges, whatever it is, actually says, 4 meg or whatever the size is. So yeah, I'm guessing it's just the jumper pack. The cartridge is Donkey Kong 64, and yeah, looking at the connector, it doesn't look too bad from what I can see, but could be just dirty connector. Obviously we could have a dirty connector inside the console, but again, it doesn't look too bad. Anyway, let's just power it on and see if it does anything at all. That's supposed to click in. Oh yeah, there it goes. So the little clip on there, power brick isn't so great anymore. That's okay. Now I've got this little janky LCD setup going on here, but it's handy for breaking out and just testing these kind of things real quick, so we'll use this. Okay. So we should just be on the AV input, everything's plugged in. So the light came on at the front of the console, which is a good start, but we've got no signal. And yeah, jiggling around the cable doesn't seem to do anything. Just make sure we are indeed on the right input. Yes. AV input. Where's the enter button on this? AV, nothing going on, no signal. Again, we might just stick that up there and just jiggle around these cables, nothing going on. I'm just going to grab another cable. This is one I usually use for the Super Nintendo that I've got, but I think it's safe to use it with the N64. I think there is a bit of an issue with certain cables, like they're wired differently for NTSC and PAL consoles for the Super Nintendo and all that kind of jazz, but I think it's safe to use here. It does have S-video as well, but this little thing doesn't accept S-video, and yeah, we're still getting no signal at all. It's odd that the power light comes on though. We might just clean out this cartridge a little bit. I'm just going to put some IPA on a little cotton bud and just run it over the pins there real quick. It's not going to get them super clean, but it should at least remove some gunk, if any. It's a little bit darker than it was going in, but not much. It didn't seem super dirty. And yep, still no signal. So the other thing we can do is spray some IPA directly on that edge connector and just do a bit of that. That should hopefully clean out the actual cartridge port inside the console, but still, yep, no signal. So maybe it's just, you know, a broken AV connector on the console itself, but it looks like we're going to have to pull it apart to find out. I'm just going to test this one more time real quick with the original cable. Yeah, nothing. And the power light still comes on, so alright, let's pull it apart. One thing I really do miss is the eject button that the Super Nintendo has. It's always fun to just slap that thing and the cartridge pops out. Anyway, this is not my favorite Nintendo, obviously. Let's open it up. So we've got game bit screws, looks like about 6 of them. So yeah, I never owned a Nintendo 64 back in the day. A friend of mine had one, and that was good enough. I mean, we mainly just played GoldenEye, a little bit of Link to the Past, but beyond that, my experience with the Nintendo 64 is fairly minimal. And certainly when it comes to repairs, I wouldn't know where to start. But hopefully, just my general troubleshooting knowledge will get us through, but I guess we'll be finding out. Looks like all these screws are the same size, which is good. Don't have to worry about mixing them up. I did briefly own one of these back in the late 2000s, I want to say. I think I paid like $5 for it or something like that. And I tried to S-video mod it by like adding a little S-video connector from JCar and soldering it somewhere random on the board, that using instructions that I found on the internet at the time. I dare say that mod is long dead because it was pretty shiteful. I think I need to get this expansion pack out. I'm hoping that I'm not going to do any damage. Just oh, it is the memory expansion pack. There you go. So I thought it was just the jumper, but apparently not. Cool. In fact, I think Donkey Kong 64 requires the expansion pack, so that should have been a sign that it was going to come with this. Anyway, like I said, don't know a huge deal about these. Right, on the inside, looks pretty clean, to be honest. Like, yeah, pretty clean. We've got this massive heatsink sort of thing here, and some RF shielding. Looking at the AV connector, nothing much to see on this side, so let's dig a little deeper. There are a lot of screws. I'm sure if I looked up how to pull one of these apart, it would tell me you only need to take out these 5 screws. I'm just going to start pulling out screws and eventually something will come out. Alright, cartridge port ones are longer. Makes sense. think these two. Maybe the expansion slot might need to be released. Dare I say that's going all the way through for a bit of reinforcement. Aha! Yep. Alright. Stay there. How did that go? Okay. Well, the RF shield wants to come off, which is fine with me. Oh, he's so little. Right, well, to get the other top RF shield, I guess we have to take this heatsink off, and yeah, I don't want to do that right now. I want to have a look at this port here. Well, it looks okay. I can't see any of the pins moving when I move the connector. We could always probe it on the scope as well and just see if signals are actually getting up to the connector. Otherwise, yeah, we're gonna have to backtrack. What I should do is look at voltages. Obviously the LED came on, but this power brick is supposed to output 3.3 volts and 12 volts. Maybe, I'm guessing the LED runs off 3.3, but maybe we're missing that 12 volts, and that could be important. Alright, let's get some pointy probes for this. And it is saying the 3 in this corner should all be ground. Let's just poke that one. 2 along the top should be 3.3 volts, 3.8. I guess there's no load on it, so it's not huge variance. And yeah, 11.9, so it's like our voltages are all there. And all the pins are working. Does the LED come on without a cartridge? Yes, it does. Let's just see, make sure our voltages are getting through to the main board. So we can see 12 volts should be coming across there. We're at 12.4 now. Interesting. And yeah, still 3.8 out of the 3.3 volts. It does seem a bit high. I'm going to power it off, we'll just unplug it. Let me just stick in these things, see if that pulls our voltage down. Right, LED's on again. Let's just see. 3.8 and 13. 3.78. 13.3, that does seem rather high. I wouldn't expect it to be up that high. I'm wondering now if the power supply has got issues and possibly has taken out something on the board. Just do a quick poke around at the video connector just to see. In fact, let's go through the cable so we can see that our signals are making it out through the cable. We'll just test our composite, which could be that. That's up in the mega ohms. Let's just do a little sweep. There we go. V. I suppose that makes sense. Now that resistance is a little bit higher. It's higher than I want to see, but I guess it's just a cheap old cable. In fact, made in China, so it's not even a original Nintendo cable. Let's just have a look, see if Oh, maybe that's left and right audio. So yes, it is. Again, 4.6 ohms. Does seem a little high. Just going to quickly compare my cable just to see if it's any better. I mean, this is an AliExpress job as well, so it could be just as bad, if not worse. Yeah, I'm out 4.2. Oh, hang on. The left side is only seeing 1.2 ohms. Maybe that was just my poor connection on the pin on the motherboard, maybe. And V. 1.2 ohms. Okay, well, I'm going to use this cable from here on because it just seems to have a little bit less resistance. So yeah, I think this would be better just so we can rule out any cable issues. But clearly things are making it through the cable to our display, so where do we go from here? We should clean this as well. Give it a quick rub down. Yeah, looks pretty clean. Just do the old. Bring that in backwards. You shouldn't do that. Right. Still nothing. Pretty sure nothing works without the jumper pack or the expansion. Nothing. Zip, zero, zilch. Alright, so I just googled N64 PSU voltages, and one of the first threads that came up was somebody wanting to hook up their N64 to LiPo batteries. But it does also say in here that the 12 volt rail, which also steps down to 7.4 and 5 volts, it says the onboard video encoder requires 5 volts. So if our 12 volt rail is not working, then we'll still get our power LED and it'll look like the console is working, but we won't have video output. So maybe there's an issue with the 12 volt rail. And maybe that's why it's not pulling down our power supply. So we're seeing 13 plus volts there. So it looks like our 12 volts comes down to the switch here. There is also a little wire here, but maybe that runs into the board. I'm guessing it's multi-layer board and probably disappears somewhere random. I'm not seeing it at these caps here. Oh no, there it is. It doesn't appear that these little caps here are shorted or anything, so that's good. So let's just check. 12 volt is not shorted to ground, and either is the 3.3. That's a ground. Okay, yeah, 12 volts down here to this pin, so yes, that is good. And I'm guessing at some point we switch this on, that goes through our switch, which appears to be working, and then it comes back out. I like how they've got these little arrows. Comes back out, routes around here, disappears under the expansion port, disk drive, the fabled N64 DD, which never really did much for anyone, and it also seems to pop out around here somewhere. And then obviously it's going off into various places on the board. So yeah. But I mean, it suggests that it gets regulated down to 5 volts and that 7.4 or whatever. So where exactly does that happen? Might need to remove the stuff on the top side to get a better look. Right, with all those screws out, this chunky heat sink thing comes out. Hopefully this RF shield, which is made up of a bunch of separate pieces, is going to come out. Right, so that's what our heatsink's doing. It's keeping all these ICs happy, I guess, you know, CPU and video processor, whatever, RAM and stuff. So there are some surface mount caps, but they look okay. What I do see is a voltage regulator that says VI plus 12 volts, VO plus 5 volts, so in and out, and obviously ground. Let's take a closer look at that. So the probe's around the wrong way, but we're seeing 12.4 volts in and 5 volts out. So the voltage regulator is working and supplying 5 volts in theory to multiple other ICs. Let's look at this cap here. It's got 5 volts being supplied, so where to next? I'd have to have a look at what ICs I've got around the board and see what they all mean. Just going to scope the video output. I won't bring over the oscilloscope unless I find something unusual. Yes, there is absolutely nothing on the video connector. There's just a tiny bit of noise, but nothing substantial apart from plus 5 volts. So nothing going to the video connector. Right, so I did a quick look on Google and did manage to find the main stuff that I need to know about the board. So yeah, our Reality coprocessor is here. There's 2 megabyte RD RAM under here, CPU's under here, obviously game pack slot, video DAC, video DAC. I don't have that video encoder chip on my board. Audio DAC, something PIF, whatever that is. Maybe that's the lockout chip. And something. So yeah, I don't have this separate video encoder chip, at least not anywhere obvious. Anyway, while I was also looking around, I found my box of N64 random bits and realized that I do actually have a copy of Majora's Mask by the looks of it, but it is Japanese one, so this may not, like, it'll probably have some kind of region lockout, I imagine, but if there's an issue with the Donkey Kong 64 cartridge, maybe this will lead us somewhere. Maybe we'll get the exact same stuff and not get anywhere, but pretty sure Majora's Mask is also one of the games that needs the expansion pack, so I'm hoping it's not the expansion pack that has an issue. Power brick is mildly warm, but very mild. Alright, let's see if this makes any difference. Our LED is on, and we're still seeing no signal coming out. I'm just gonna reseat this. Nothing. So yeah, there are very little signs of life, and I dare say it's probably not a cartridge fault, well, not a fault with the Donkey Kong cartridge. Could be the expansion pack. I'm still not totally certain on the power supply either. Just looking at those voltages that we had. Right, so I've had it running for a few minutes just so I could have a look what it looks like under the thermal cam, and really it's just an excuse to bust out the thermal cam. But I can see something interesting. The RAM and also the reality coprocessor, whatever it's called, is quite warm, as you would expect, as is the video encoder or video DAC, whatever it was, that voltage regulator. But looking over here, the CPU is practically cold. It's saying it's about 38 degrees. In fact, let's take the heatsink off it so we can see the die in the middle is registering about 48, but considering there's no heatsink on it, you would expect it to be getting pretty hot pretty quickly. So it looks like the CPU is pretty much not running. Now, is that going to be an issue with the CPU, or is that because something else on the board isn't working and the CPU's got nothing to do? That could also explain why the voltages are a little bit higher than expected, as you know, it's not being fully dragged down as this system's not fully working. There is another little voltage regulator over here that I want to look at. I might just remove the expansion pack. Just want to see what that's outputting. So 3.8 volts on pin 1, 3.8 on pin 2, so maybe they're just both inputs. 2.5 on the middle pin, 1.2 on the fourth pin, and the last pin looks like just ground. So I think that is the correct voltages. I'm pretty sure we're supposed to see about 2.5 and 1.5 or something for a couple of those outputs, just based on what I've read online. So our little 3.3 volt voltage regulator is outputting the correct voltages as well, and it's not getting hot. It's not like the 12 volt one. So could still be a bad power supply, but I'm not 100% sold on that at the moment, as I haven't been this entire time, I guess. But yeah, a bit odd that the CPU doesn't seem to be running. And from what I gather, like the faults on these things aren't usually caused by like one of the ICs. It's usually something else going on, like a bad solder joint, from what I've gathered about the Nintendo 64. So looking around the board, nothing jumps out. Does that come off? Yes. Ew. Alright, so there's a lot of gunk under the cartridge port connector, which I just realized just pulls out. It looks like flux though, and I've seen it before, especially on the Super Nintendo. You'll see that the bottom of the board is just covered in this flux crap because they just don't bother cleaning it off, I guess. I'm just going to try and clean this up without getting it down into the pinholes. Yeah, I reckon that's just flux, so it's probably not going to be causing an issue, but I just want to clean up the bulk of it, and then I can spray some IPA in this connector just to make sure. Alright, that's enough of that. Let's give it another try. Will this be it? No. Power LED's on, so it is running. But and just sort of twisting around the cartridge just to see if there's a sweet spot for the connector, but nothing's happening. There's got to be something else. It's just gotta. I really hope it's not like a dead CPU, because I don't exactly have parts in 64 that I could salvage one off, and I don't really feel like desoldering that CPU. Looks like 120 pin quad flat pack. Alright, so I am going to have to split this off into a second part, as we're probably about to hit the half-hour mark, and there's probably still a good half hour of this to go. So we will work out what is wrong with this machine and get it back up and running in part 2, and also diagnose an issue with this power supply. So there is a fault on the main board of this, which is actually visible in this video. So if you want to take a guess at what it is, by all means put it in the comments down below. But I won't spoil that right now. Yeah, we'll wait till part 2. So until then, thank you very much for watching. A massive thanks to the people that support the channel on Patreon and YouTube memberships. You can find links to that stuff in the description, or maybe one's popping up around here somewhere. And I will catch you in part 2, and we'll actually play some games on this thing. Thanks for watching the Retro Channel. Bye.